The storm had swallowed the world even before I realized what was happening. 1 minute the sky was nothing but a lazy stretch of pale winter blue, and the next it turned into a furious white wall, roaring across the empty mountain road like it had been waiting for someone, waiting for us. I remember the sharp skid of the tires, the jolt in my chest, and the terrible silence that followed when the car finally came to a stop. That was the moment I understood that nothing about this day would go the way I planned. That was the moment I realized I was stranded in the middle of nowhere, with my best friend's mom. And when she looked at me through the swirling white haze and said softly, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I felt a cold deeper than the snow settle inside me, not from fear, but from the weight of everything we were about to face together. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. Her name was Mara Alden, a woman everyone in town admired for her calm voice, brilliant smile, and the small bakery she ran like a cozy lighthouse on rainy days. She was the mother of my best friend, Kai, and though I'd known her for years, I'd never spent more than a polite holiday dinner in her presence. I certainly never imagined I'd be trapped on a frozen mountainside with her, ice wind screaming through the cracked door of her SUV. But life has a way of taking the most ordinary people and placing them in extraordinary circumstances, as if trying to see what they're really made of. We had left town earlier that afternoon to pick up a package Kai needed urgently, a set of components for a robotics competition he had worked months for. Mara had offered to drive, saying she needed a break from the rush of the bakery, and I joined partly to help, partly because I admired how she always managed to bring a softness into the room simply by walking into it. The trip was supposed to be simple. A 3-hour drive. Back before dark. Hot chocolate from her shop at the end as a thank you. But winter didn't care about our plans. As the blizzard thickened, Mara tried to stay relaxed, her hands steady on the wheel, humming an old song that cracked slightly when she breathed. I didn't notice her knuckles widening until visibility dropped to nearly nothing. The road curved unexpectedly. The tires lost traction. Snow swallowed us whole. Now the vehicle sat at a slanted angle, half buried against a low snowbank. The engine sputtered twice, coughed like a dying animal, and gave up. The cold crept in almost immediately. It wasn't the kind of cold that stings, it was the kind that sinks, slow and heavy, into the bones. Mara stared out the windshield, her breath trembling in the dim light. "We're not going anywhere until this storm passes," she whispered, more to herself than to me. She looked at me then, with eyes that were tired but steady. "We'll have to keep each other warm. Body heat helps. We'll manage." She said it gently, the way a teacher reassures a frightened child, and I nodded even though fear rippled through my muscles. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I knew how dangerous winter could be when you were unprepared. We bundled ourselves in the spare blankets she kept in the back, the thin fabric barely more than a stubborn barrier against the cold. The windows fogged quickly, turning the world outside into a white smear. Inside, we breathed small clouds of vapor and listened to the storm rage around us like a giant slamming its fists on the sky. At first, we sat stiffly, each trying to give the other space. But the cold didn't care about politeness, either. Soon, it forced us closer, and closer still, until our shoulders touched beneath the blanket. I could feel her shivering. Not a dramatic tremble, but a quiet, steady shaking that told me she was colder than she was letting on. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice barely a scratch. She gave a faint smile. "I'm more worried about you. You're younger. Your body will burn through energy faster." Her concern surprised me. Not because she wasn't a caring person, everyone knew she was, but because in that moment, she wasn't thinking like a baker or a mother or a neighbor. She was thinking like someone who refused to let another person suffer while she could still do something about it. As the minutes stretched into an hour, the temperature dropped further. My fingers grew numb. My breath felt thin. Mara's shivers grew stronger, and she pressed her arms tighter around herself, the blanket shaking slightly with each breath she took. Without thinking, I shifted closer, wrapping more of the blanket around her shoulders. She looked down at me with tired gratitude, and for a moment, despite the cold, the world felt warm. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, time slowed. My phone battery had died 10 minutes earlier. Mara's had maybe 5% left, just enough to send a single text message to Kai. Storm hit. We're stuck. Don't panic. No location. No follow-up. Just hope that something, somehow, would help. The cold became a silence between us, the heavy kind that pressed on the chest. I could hear her breaths growing shallow, and panic flickered in my mind like a sickly flame. Hypothermia didn't look dramatic. It looked quiet. Subtle. Like this. I reached out and touched her arm, her skin was frighteningly cold. Mara, you're freezing. She gave a soft chuckle, weak but determined. I've survived worse mornings at the bakery. Those freezers are brutal. But then she winced, a small twist of pain on her face, and leaned her head back against the seat. That scared me more than anything. Instinctively, I pulled her closer, wrapping both arms tightly around her to share whatever warmth my body still held. She didn't resist. She leaned into me slowly, carefully, like someone allowing themselves to trust a fragile branch over a frozen river. Her head rested lightly on my shoulder. Even then, she trembled. Time became a strange, dreamlike blur. Sometimes we talked, about Kai, about her late husband, about my plans after graduation. Other times we sat in silence, drifting between alertness and a dangerous kind of exhaustion. I knew we couldn't fall asleep. I knew sleep in cold could be deadly. So every few minutes, I nudged her gently or whispered her name, and she did the same for me. The storm outside was relentless. But something changed inside the car. The fear didn't disappear, but it softened. It became a quiet bond forged by necessity, by survival, by two people clinging to warmth not just physically, but emotionally. We weren't mother and son, or adult and teen, or any awkward label the world might assign. We were simply two human beings fighting the same battle, depending on each other to stay awake, stay present, stay alive. Hours passed. Then, just when the cold felt unbearable and the blanket felt thinner than paper, a faint glow appeared through the fogged window. At first I thought it was my imagination. Then I heard it, a distant rumble. Not thunder.